Hey guys, what's up and welcome to today's live video. Of course, today we're going live for our weekly Q&A session. Had a whole bunch of questions come in this week. Some again from John, not surprisingly, which is always good. But I've had a few others come in as well in the DMs. So I'll make sure by the end of this session that we get everybody's questions answered. And then that way, hopefully you can all move forward in power and obviously chase down your health and body transformation goals. Now, as always, I will give you guys as much detail as I kind of know or as necessary, but I'm more concerned about giving you enough information and hopefully delivering it in a way where you can actually take action rather than kind of breaking down all the specific nuances and all the data and the science and blah, blah, blah. Like where that's necessary, I will do so. But as I say, I'm more concerned with you guys actually moving forward in confidence and taking action and getting results rather than just kind of coming here and hearing what I have to say. I know that's always a good thing. We all love to learn. We like to learn new things and have new ideas and obviously get clarity for ourselves around certain things. But ultimately, in relation to actually getting the goals that we want to see in our health, our body, our life, and so on, that is going to come down to us being willing enough to take action and, of course, take it on a consistent basis. Now, just before I kick off, I just realized I've left my my bottle of water over the other side of the room. So I'm just going to go and grab that and I shall return. Okay, let's get rolling. So just adjust this microphone. Brilliant. Right. Let me see here what our first question is. Right. So this is one of the questions that came through in the DMs. The first question is, how can I stick to my fat loss goals once I set them? I often find myself starting, but then falling off, starting, falling off, and so on. Okay. Very common thing. Many of us do this, and not only with our health and body transformation, often in our business, in our relationships, even in the sense of our being or our spirituality and so on. Often we will have lots of goals, dreams, hopes, aspirations, and so on that we're trying to attain. And we get started and we start making progress and so on. And then for whatever reason, it's going to be different for all of us. But we end up sabotaging ourselves. We end up falling off the bandwagon and we end up often stuck in this cycle of start, get a little bit of progress, fall off, move back. Start, get a little bit of progress, fall off, move back, and so on. And it's what we call the sabotage cycle, ultimately. And many of us get caught there. Now, how can I stick to my goals once I set them? What we have to remember is quite often for many of us, actually achieving the goal is quite simple in the respect that, oh, well, all I need to do is X, Y, and Z. There's like these few things I need to do, and that will lead me to the goal. So quite often the attainment of the goal isn't as difficult as we like to make it out to be. The catch that most of us have is maintaining the result once we achieve it. And the reason that many of us get there, we'll achieve the goal and then fall off, is because we refused to change as an individual. We refused to become the new type of being that we needed to be in order to own this result that we wanted. So instead, what we did is we come along, we borrowed it, temporarily experienced it, but never truly owned it as part of self. So therefore, it's impossible for us to maintain it. Because if I am one particular identity, this is how I see myself, I do some things to transform how I appear or how I feel and so on. If I don't identify with that new version of me, I'm going to end up dropping back to where I was and sometimes even further back due to metabolic damages and physiological problems and things that we can cause depending on the approach that we took in order to achieve that particular result. So that's based on, okay, well, how can I stick to my fat loss goals? Well, that's one way. It's like we need to have an identity shift. Now, in theory, sounds easy. We'll just be somebody else. The truth is, though, many of us don't want to step into that, and we will do all kinds of dumb and weird shit in order to keep us stuck where we are, because that's where our comfort zone is. And quite often we're in a place where even though we say we don't like it and there are different things I want to have or experience from life, there is this part of us that's really comfortable and content with how we think the world sees us in this moment. And that's what we often don't want to lose. It's like, oh, well, the world thinks I'm a good person, I'm nice, I'm this or that. And the world, when I say the world, I mean perhaps your peers, your friends, your family, those around you, or maybe even what government, society, and so on expects of you. We get kind of stuck in this place where we end up living to satisfy everybody else's needs. And because in that place, everybody appears to like us and we've got good things going on that make us feel good, we don't want to lose that. We're worried that if we now suddenly change and become this new being, that we're going to lose all of these positive aspects that are keeping us stuck. The catch is, for most of us, once you actually step out and go and chase down your goal, very rare is it that you will find that things get worse, because obviously you're doing things to better yourself. And the truth is, anyone that wants to stop you from bettering yourself probably shouldn't be in your life, or at least they shouldn't feature in your life in a significant way anyhow. And that's not to say that they're just inherently a bad person, but if being around them or with them doesn't serve you and actually makes you or your life worse, then it's probably time to reevaluate those who you do associate with. Now, to kind of simplify this down and kind of get out of the psychology behind it and how we tend to operate, how can I stick to my fat loss goals once I set them? Right. So first off, of course, we have to have a goal that we believe is attainable for us. Now, if the end goal is what we need or want, but at this point we don't see it as attainable, what we then have to do is back out. And we have to back the goal out or the target out to a point where we're like, that's attainable. So we might be sitting here, and if it is body transformation related, we might be going, well, I need to lose about 30 pounds. The problem is the way I've been thinking, feeling, operating over the past few years has left me in this place where I'm not confident in my ability to lose that 30 pounds. So what we need to do is go, okay, well, maybe I can't lose 30 pounds, but could I maybe lose 5 pounds in a month or a pound a week? And we scale the goal back down where we're still going to ideally move towards that bigger goal, but we're going to scale it back to a point where we're willing and confident to take action now so that we actually get moving forward and start building momentum. We need to have the goal that is small enough for us to take action, but big enough to inspire us so that we actually build some motivation. Once we get rolling and that motivation starts to build and then we start seeing results, what should happen is we have a transition or a shift from motivation into momentum. And it's momentum that enables us to keep going. Because the truth is nothing breeds success like success. Like success is basically your biggest opportunity to remain consistent with your goals. Once you start getting results, it's very rare. I say very rare. It's much harder is probably what I mean more so. It's much harder for us to give up because we like seeing that good result. And we get obviously a bit of a pickup, a boost from it. Oh, wow, I got on the scale, I lost weight. Oh, I did my caliper testing, I've lost body fat, or whatever the thing might be that you're tracking. Seeing that perpetual movement towards progress or in the direction of progress is often enough to keep us on track. So scale back the goal where needed, and that will help you stay on track. And then what we also want to do is find a way whereby we can go, okay, well, my goal, for example, if we stick on this 30 pounds one, my goal is 30 pounds. Well, what can I now do in order to guarantee my result? So one, we've scaled back the result and said, oh, well, this is what I'm going to aim to lose, 5 pounds in a month or 1 pound a week instead of this big ass goal of 30 pounds. So instead, what we now have to do is go, okay, well, what actions are going to be required of me? But not only what actions, what is the minimal effective dosage? Because many of us try to do this thing where we go all or nothing. We do as many different things as we can all overnight in order to try and achieve this new result that we want. But the problem is, again, we're trying to do all these different things that are required of us as a new being, but we're not yet that new being, that new person that we need to be. Well, we're still the old guy that's struggling with the weight or with the health or with the money or whatever the problem is. So we need to kind of go, okay, well, what do I know I can manage within my current capacity? So, for example, it might be, okay, well, I know in order to lose 30 pounds or a pound a week, however we're looking at it, I know I need to improve my diet, I need to exercise more, and I need to get better sleep and recovery. So the foundational things. But rather than go, right, well, I'm going to have a complete new diet overhaul, I'm going to start training 6 days a week, and I'm going to make sure I get 9 hours of sleep a night. What you might do is go, right, well, I'm going to pick one of those things that I know I could get right. So I'm going to go with meals. So initially, I'm going to go with my metabolic meals, and I'm going to make sure, just for now, until I kind of build up some momentum, that the first thing I'm going to focus on is protein requirement. I'm going to make sure that I get my protein right at all 3 main meals of the day. Once I've nailed that down over the next 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 days, once that becomes an easy habit for me to maintain, then I'll add the next thing. Right, well, now I've got my protein, now I've got my protein right. What I'll do next is make sure that I get my healthy fats right. Cool, now I'll do that for the next 6 to 10 days. Once I've got that nailed, then we move on to carbohydrates and so on. And you build it out gradually, because let's face it, if we want healthy results and we want to maintain them, we need to build it into our lifestyle in a way that's sustainable. You know, it's nice to jump on the sort of the hype and the fad and the gimmick and the starvation diet treadmill sometimes. Like, we get caught up in that. Oh, you can lose 10 pounds in 5 days and all this kind of bullshit. But the problem is, as we know, it's unsustainable. Yes, you can get this quick result and, oh my God, wow, I lost 10 pounds in 5 days. But it's impossible to keep. So why not build it over time? Most of us have struggled with our health problems for an extended period of time anyway. So what's the issue now with being a little bit more patient? And then once we build that in, it's going to be much easier to keep that result once we get it. So I hope that helps. I don't want to go into too much more detail because we'll end up taking up the whole session on this one question. If you do have any additional questions on this, feel free to post them in the comments and I will get them answered. Now, our next question is, what's the best sports drink to use when working out? Okay, so personally, I am not a fan of sports drinks. Those of you who know me or have maybe worked with me or been following my stuff for a while, mostly through Facebook and so on, you might know that I'm not really a fan of sports drinks, isotonics, and so on. That's not because they're all terrible or that they're going to immediately kill you, but the large majority of people don't actually need them. But of course, our health and fitness industry, and I say health and fitness like this because really it's a disease management industry, but that's something for another video. So yeah, really, they don't give a shit about your health. All they give a shit about is profit, which, fair enough, they're a business. It's supposed to care about profit. But for the average person, isotonics, sports drinks, and all the rest of it are just surplus to requirements. Like, we don't need them. Most of us are trying to reduce our calorie intake, etc. anyway. So then when we go and add in a sports drink or an isotonic, we end up pushing our calories back up. No, Tyrone. They now do sports drinks that are unsweetened, are sugar-free. So therefore, they're sweetened instead because that helps keep the calorie content down. And yes, that's very true. It does keep the calorie content down, but it often takes the toxicity level up because quite often these chemical sweeteners, etc., are foreign to the body. Yes, we've had them around for a long time, but it's still a chemical that your body has to detox. Now, if we're trying to move towards health, using a synthetic man-made chemical often isn't going to be the way to do that. So if you are going to use some kind of drink to help enhance your performance, number one, the best thing to use is just water. That's what we evolved on for anywhere between the last 2.6 and 6 million years, depending whose research you're looking at. Essentially, we evolved on water. Now, that's therefore the best thing to do. Now, what you can do with your water if you want, because you're going to train and you're going to be using electrolytes and energy and so on, is you can add a pinch of sea salt to that. Now, when I say sea salt, I mean unrefined sea salt. So we don't want white crystallized crap off the shelf, which is basically sodium chloride. What you ideally want is unrefined Celtic sea salt or unrefined Hawaiian sea salt, something like that. You can use, Himalayan pink rock salt and things like that too. But the mineral profiles are different. They tend to be much lower in magnesium and so on. And because it's lower in magnesium with your rock salts, they often aren't as beneficial for helping you absorb the water and the hydration. They don't keep quite so good salinity within the body. So that's not to say they're bad. They're just not quite as effective as unrefined sea salt. And Celtic sea salt is one of the best ones you can get and use. So that's a great way to help hydrate your body quicker, is by adding a pinch of sea salt to it, not to the point where you can taste. What you'll notice is different is the mouth feel of the water, not necessarily the taste. It shouldn't taste salty. And then another good thing that has a lot of good research behind it is BCAAs, or branch chain amino acids. So you can get higher quality ones and so on. But what that will do instead, rather than being like a standard electrolyte drink or full of sweeteners, you won't ideally get one that's unsweetened. But that will just help to support the maintenance and the building of muscle tissue. Now, of course, if we're trying to get healthy, lose weight and so on, we want to maintain as much muscle mass as possible to keep metabolism high, to keep us strong, and to keep us fit and able, basically. Because as we get older, or if we're doing or exposing ourselves to extreme amounts of or periods of stress, then of course that can over time break down lean tissue and so on. So we want to maintain that. And a good way to do it is a good BCAA drink. I would recommend you get one that has at least a ratio of 2 to 1 to 1. Some of them are even up to 8 to 1 to 1. Now, what that means is the ratio of the branch chain amino acids. For those of you who don't know, amino acids are basically like the building blocks of proteins. And when it comes to rebuilding, replenishing muscle and maintaining muscle, the branch chain amino acids, which are leucine, isoleucine, and valine, are the main amino acids that help rebuild and maintain muscle. So you will want one that has, as I mentioned, anywhere up to like an 8 to 1 to 1 ratio of those three amino acids, but at least a 2 to 1 to 1. Okay, and that will help. But generally speaking, again, not needed. Water is absolutely fine for the average person. So I hope that one helps on or with regards to sports drinks. Now, on to some of John's questions that he posted during the week. These were posted on one of my lives that I did where I was talking about how much water we should drink each day, which then I assume triggered some questions from John regarding other aspects of water consumption. So one of those questions was, drinking water with cordial, is that any good? Now, a bit like the discussion we were just having with the sports drinks and the isotonics and so on, in reality, cordial not needed if you like it, because some people don't enjoy the taste of water and so on. I have no particular issue with my clients or you guys or whoever using cordial or dilute squash and so on. But what I recommend is you get one that is not, or that doesn't have artificial sweeteners. You are much better off if you're going to use one and you want some kind of sweetness, just get one with sugar. Yes, you can argue, well, sugar's bad for us. Yes, it is, but at least your body knows what to do with sugar. It's not a neurotoxin in the same way that many of these chemical sweeteners are, and it's less of a hormonal disruptor. There is hormonal disruption with refined sugar, but it's not necessarily as bad as the synthetic chemicals and so on. Because the catch you have with many of these synthetic sweeteners is you'll have the chemical issue where you've got detox from it and so on, the neurotoxicity and the hormonal toxicity and so on. But you also have the fact that because of the sweetness, they often trigger the same responses or very similar responses in the body and can still lead to things like insulin resistance, diabetes, and syndrome X and so on. Whereas, yes, that's all possible with excessive consumption of sugar too. But as I mentioned, at least our physiology knows what to do with sugar, because ultimately it's just a simple carbohydrate. So cordial, not necessary, but if you like it, just get a high quality one that ideally doesn't have artificial sweeteners in, is what I would say. Personally, if I was to flavor or whatever my water, I prefer to actually squeeze fresh fruit into it. Some people like lemon, lime, things like that, because it also helps with alkalizing the body and so on. But strawberries is a very good one. Cucumber is very refreshing as well. You just slice cucumber, put that in your water, and then basically you get what we call infused water rather than sort of flavored, if you know what I mean. It just has a hint or a scent of these flavors rather than being completely consumed by it. Cool. So I hope that helps. John's next question was bottled water in plastic. Not good. Plastic water bottles. Okay, cool. So there's two questions here, both regarding plastic and water. One is basically buying bottled water in plastic bottles, and the other is buying plastic water bottles to put your water in. ultimately what John wants to know is it any good? Are they safe? And so on. So if you're buying bottled plastic water, so in an ideal world, you wouldn't buy plastic water or water in plastic bottles. Main reason is you would hopefully have a good filter at home that you could filter your water with. That saves you having to buy plastic bottled water. Main issue with that is water that has sat in plastic for a long period of time the plastic can start to leach what we call xenoestrogens into the water, which mimic our body's own estrogen and can disrupt our hormonal profile. So because of the excess estrogens that we tend to have in and around our environment these days, a lot of people are having issues with increased incidence or risk of estrogen-driven cancers or estrogen-dominant cancers and so on, plus obesity and things like that because of the hormonal disruption. For many of us, in fact, really for all of us, particularly men, if we want to stay lean, we need testosterone to stay high. And of course, our estrogen levels to be kept in check by high testosterone. The catch that tends to happen when obviously estrogen tips the balance and we get more estrogen. And for many of us, we're so stressed out that testosterone comes down. Well, now that leaves an environment that is more conducive to storing, accumulating body fat, which of course we don't want. We want testosterone to stay high even as we age, and we want estrogen to stay at its normal levels also, and not be in excess. So where possible, avoid bottled water. But if you are going to drink it, where possible, get glass. If you can't get glass, I have mentioned this in previous videos before, but you'll want to buy either Evian, Vittel, Fiji, Strathmore, and so on. But basically, you want to buy the fastest selling water possible, because that way it will have been in the plastic bottle for a shorter period of time. And Evian, Vittel, and so on, the good quality waters tend to be the ones that sell the quickest globally. So I would always recommend, where possible, buy more of that stuff rather than the cheap shit that often gets left on the shelf and left there because people have bought the better quality stuff. And then the follow-up on that was, well, what about plastic water bottles that you buy to put your water in? If you're going to buy a water bottle, I would recommend glass. I've mentioned to you guys before, I carry a glass bottle everywhere. Not everybody wants to do that. So if you do buy a plastic bottle, because they're much lighter than carrying glass, of course, and safer, then I would say buy one that is BPA free. You want one that is a non-toxic bottle, basically. That doesn't make it perfect, but it makes it a whole lot better, and it's far less likely to have any long-term negative effect on your health. Now, the truth is, if we kind of break this down just a little bit more, for many of us, having a plastic bottle or drinking a bit of water out of a plastic bottle shouldn't really make all that much difference to our health, providing we're supporting ourselves, with our metabolic movement, metabolic meals, metabolic melatonin, and so on. Like, if we're doing all the foundational stuff right, we can get away with these things. The issue comes when it is consumed or when we have this exposure on top of our already stressed out systems and physiology. That's the catch for most of us. It's like we're already at capacity or beyond. And then what we do kind of unknowingly much of the time, or unconsciously, we do many other things that then just compound on top of that and unfortunately make things worse for us. Cool. So just before I move on to the next question, I'm just going to skim through our comments, see if we've got any additional questions come in. Cool. Lots of yeses and calls, which is good. People agreeing. That's all good. Me too. Glass every time. Titanium as a backup. Yes, titanium bottle is good as well, particularly if it's a high quality, like surgical grade titanium or stainless steel. That always helps. But yes, that's good. That's good. Yes, had a friend with a problem with that. Brilliant. Okay, so no additional questions as yet. Awesome. Right, what's our next question? Let me scroll down here. Sorry, just checking. Okay, cool. How do trees and plants affect us? Are there some negatives? We all know that generally they're good. Okay, yeah, cool. So in regards to trees and plants, in relation to us as humans maintaining health or us achieving our health and body transformation goals, of course, we have to remember that ultimately we're an extension of nature. This is something I've spoken about previously in my videos before as well. So we are just an extension of nature. Yes, we live in modern built-up societies and so on, but what we have to look at is, okay, well, nature is designed to support us. And once upon a time, we, through our actions, also supported nature. Much of our modern practices, unfortunately, work in opposition to nature and potentially destroy it, damage it, make it worse, and so on. On the flip side, what we have to remember is nature will be here a lot longer than we will. So as much as there is this push to save the planet, and I do believe we shouldn't be dicks about it, and we should do certain things to obviously maintain and keep up our environment, nature, once it's had enough of us, will swat us out like flies anyway. Because we have to remember, nature ultimately is a living organism. It's a system of systems, just like the human body. And if you abuse it for too long, sooner or later, it will wipe out the problem. Same with us as humans. If we abuse ourselves for too long, we then get wiped out by a problem as well. Cancer, heart disease, high cholesterol, diabetes, whatever the thing might be. Basically nature says you are not a viable life force anymore. So it will swat us out. And nature will do the same with humans if we continue to abuse, if we are excessively abusing. But anyway, in regards to positive aspects or positive components of trees, plants, etc., we have to look at air quality is probably the main one. Obviously, much of the pollution, carbon dioxide, bad stuff that we produce as humans gets mopped up and is used and consumed by trees, plants, nature, because they obviously consume carbon dioxide and give out oxygen. We consume oxygen, give out carbon dioxide, and so on. So they're quite often very good for maintaining healthy environments. Now, you can get a lot of plants that are very good deodorizers and air purifiers and stuff to have in and around the home as well, particularly if you are somebody that suffers from allergens and allergies and things like that. Often these air purifying plants are a good way to help basically detox your environment of many of the chemicals and pollutants and things. So that can help. Obviously, if we're talking potential negatives, there is the fact that many people are allergic to certain plants and certain pollens and things like that. That doesn't make plants bad. It's just that individual doesn't necessarily have the capacity to deal with, cope with, adapt to that particular aspect of the plant. But often that's not necessarily nature's fault. Much of that is down to how we manage ourselves and many of the other environmental issues that we have and modern societal issues. So one of the things, there won't be a lot of mainstream research that confirms this. But if you look at, for example, from the period where we've started vaccinating and things like that, and excessive use of medications and so on, which in many cases, unfortunately, yes, there are certain aspects of medicine that is life-saving and helps. But the general populace, as you notice, the more advanced we get with medicine, the more unhealthy we're becoming. So as a result of that, that means if we are becoming more unhealthy, it just means our adaptive capacity to deal with all the stresses of our everyday lifestyle, that adaptive capacity is reducing. So basically, we are becoming less able to adapt or overcome our everyday environment. Now, when that happens, of course, it makes us more likely to suffer from allergens or have intolerances or have certain aspects of our environment that we're unable to cope with, because many of us just aren't healthy enough at the root level to deal with the summation of all these things that our body is exposed to. So pollen and etc. being one of those things. So if we had to talk negatives, that could be maybe be one of them, but that's more down to the individual's health status rather than the status of nature. Another good thing with plants and trees is climate regulation. You'll notice anywhere that has an area with more trees, vegetation, plant growth, etc., that area will often be a lot cooler. So obviously there's all this talk about climate change and stuff. I won't give opinions on that right now, but there's talk of climate change. Yeah. One of the things we have to remember is that much of our environment is built up concrete jungles and so on now, where many of the trees that would have originally been there have been removed. A lot of our streets used to be lined with trees, streets, freeways, and so on. That's a lot of that has gone now and been taken away. Well, when you take away trees, vegetation, and so on, that will actually increase the overall or the average temperature of that area, because there's far less moisture and humidity and so on, as in tree life, plant life there to absorb much of that heat and obviously to create shade and so on. So instead you get the sun beating down directly onto the concrete or the tarmac, whatever it might be, that heats up because it's not shaded by the trees and things anymore. So it helps with climate regulation and so on. And then, of course, another good thing is it provides a lot of habitat and refuge, etc., for other species and aspects of nature. So in reality, when you look at plants, trees in the grand scheme of things, they're actually very beneficial. Of course, if we got rid of all trees, well, we would die out anyway. But the good thing is there are plenty of trees still out there. They are planting more. We do have to be careful, of course, to keep a good balance. Because it's one thing to go, oh, well, we're cutting down this particular rainforest. Don't worry, we're planting some more trees over here. Well, they're going to take a long time, obviously, to get to full maturity and things like that. So we have to be a bit smarter as humans sometimes, I think. But ultimately, the message, I think, when it comes to us and nature and so on, which isn't quite relevant to your question, but is relevant to health and the sustainability of us as humans on our planet, is we have to remember that we must save self first. Now, there's this sort of narrative and push that we need to save the planet. Yeah. And many people make it almost like their life's quest and duty to save the planet. Oh, we need to save Mother Nature. We're killing her and so on. Well, as I've mentioned, in reality, nature will kick our ass before we kick her ass. But the only way to truly save nature, if you think about it, is for each individual to save themselves first. So if I naturally go, you know what, I'm going to take responsibility for myself. I'm going to make sure that I'm healthy, that I'm thriving, and that I'm taking care of myself. Well, what that means is I'm now going to make better food choices, which come from more sustainable sources, that come from fields and farms that haven't been sprayed with agrochemicals, herbicides, pesticides, rodenticides, fungicides, and all the rest of it. So they're grown ideally organically and so on, which then helps to maintain the health of the soil. So if the soil is healthy, that means the plants that grow in it are healthy. That means the animals that come along and eat the plants are healthy. And then the humans that come along and eat the animals at the plants are healthy too. But when we're caked in chemicals or eating foods that are caked in chemicals all the time, and then the processed, the refined shit, well, it's very difficult for us to be healthy when we eat shit. Now, when we're not healthy, we can't actually make logical, rational decisions because on the inside, on the physiological level, our body is in crisis, which heightens anxiety, which heightens stress, which heightens our emotional and reactionary response. So often we end up going on these crusades to save the earth when ultimately all we need to do is save ourselves. So that's why I bang on so much, which you'll have seen in my previous videos, why I talk about ruthless responsibility of self so much. It's literally, if you guys ever come to work with me, it's the foundational component of everything we do. Oh, you're going to join me in my 12-week program, my 12-week metabolic accelerator program. Cool. Guess what's foundation? Ruthless responsibility of self. Oh, you're going to join me in my 12-month program. Even better. Guess what's at the foundation? Ruthless responsibility of self. So it always comes down to us taking responsibility for us, because ultimately we can't control the world. We can't control other people. The only thing we can control is us and our response to other people, our response to the outside world. So when we realize that and we acknowledge it and accept it and take that responsibility, that's when you can see radical changes in your health, in your body, in your money game, in business or in profession and career, in your relationships and so on. Like everything radically begins to change because you're no longer a victim of these things external to you. Instead, you become the creator of your reality and not a victim of the reality that you perceive to be going on, but there isn't. So I won't go into that anymore now. I'll leave that because we were talking about trees and somehow got into ruthless responsibility. But that's how we roll here. Cool. So trees are good. Protect them if you can. Always good to have some around the home, plants and things. As I say, very good for detox and so on. So our next question is, how does sound affect us mentally and physically? I was taught in Tai Chi that certain sounds do certain things. Yes. So when it comes to sound, which is ultimately vibrational energy. Now, if you ever look into quantum mechanics and quantum physics and so on, you will realize or come to understand that everything in the universe, including us, is just energy. Like we're vibrational energy. Basically, every different thing that we have, that we can hold, that we can see and perceive, is just energy vibrating at different frequencies. Music is no different. It's a vibrational frequency, and ultimately what we're seeing is, so we live it within an electromagnetic existence, and ultimately what we're seeing when we experience these things and sound and so on is interference within that electromagnetic field that we are in. Now, of course, there are vibrational energies that are good, that are what we would call coherent with the body, and then we have vibrational energies which are less coherent or incoherent with the body and will tend to disrupt and take us away from health. Now, this not only happens with sound, it also happens with things such as your emotional energetic state. So if you are angry, for example, or enraged, or you feel depressed, anxious, basically any of the emotions that we would consider to be negative, they will actually start breaking down your body and essentially reducing your health. So over time, because every thought we have is experienced by every cell in the body, what we find is that our body will mimic the energetic state of the mind. So if I'm stressed out and all uptight and everything in the mind, well, then the body starts to replicate that, because those negative energies that come from that will start to affect the body. Now, of course, if on the flip side, I'm full of positive energy, joy, love, excitement, happiness, and so on, then that's going to heal the body. So it does the opposite. It's a much more coherent energy, and over time will heal. Now, that's not to say you can never have a negative feeling or emotion. You can. The catch is when many of us get stuck there. So like most things, we want a good balance, but we want to, where possible, lean on the more positive emotions, because they will tend to take us towards health. Same thing is applicable when we're talking sound. So that the sounds and vibrational energies of sound is the same. So if you have like positive feeling, positive, more energetic music, meditation type music, and so on. Live music is also very effective. Like instruments played live is very good for people, again, because of those vibrational energies. There are people that use vibrational energies or music, sound healing, to deal with and to overcome many of their health problems. Now, yes, of course, again, there's not a lot of mainstream science that backs it up, but there's lots of independent science that backs it up, mainly because mainstream doesn't want to sell you the stuff that makes you healthy, because it wants you reliant on their junk convenience foods and obviously their amazing pharmaceutical products that help to manage your illness or disease. So that's not to say it's all bad. Of course, there are good aspects as well, but we just have to be realistic about what the industry is trying to do with us. And when you consider that, depending on which year we're looking at and which country within the West, whether America, UK, and so on, malprescribed drugs is actually the third and sometimes fourth leading cause of death in the world. So we've got heart disease, cancer, diabetes, and malprescribed drugs are the top four causes of death globally, worldwide. Now, when malprescribed drugs, or the medication that you're taking that's designed to treat you or help you to get better, when that is actually the cause of your death, that's of course not a very good ad campaign, from my perspective anyway, for promoting the benefits of drugs. And that's not to say there isn't a benefit. Sometimes they are needed, sometimes they're life-saving. The catch is when we rely on them and feel like, oh, well, it's not my responsibility to take care of my health, it's my doctor's. The man in the white coat can do it. I don't need to eat well, I don't need to move well, because I can just rely on a pill. That's the catch that many of us get caught in, and that's what obviously leads us to long-term poor health that we struggle to get over. Now, sorry, back to sound. So yes, there's not a whole ton of research, but it's very good for what's the word I'm looking for? Healing damage and so on in the body. There's lots of evidence to show that it can help heal and speed up the recovery of injuries. There's also a lot of research, actually, even mainstream, that shows that certain types of music and sounds help with your ability to concentrate and your cognition and so on. like most people can stay more focused with certain types of music. That tends to be things like classical music and things like jazz and so on, blues even a little bit. But on the flip side, things like heavy metal or gangster rap tends to do the opposite. It tends to disrupt people's energy and flow, and makes it harder for them to concentrate. And if they're doing tests and things with these two different types of music on and so on, they will get better results with the more harmonious music and worse results with the more negative music. So we do need to be careful with that. Another thing that sound can be good for some people is sleep. Some people like white noise in the background. Some people like low level energetic type music, as in like meditation or Tai Chi or yoga type music. Low level when they're sleeping, that helps with a lot of people, helps to kind of calm them, soothe them, and so on. What we're essentially doing for a lot of people, yes, you've got the energetic state of the music, but what it's also doing is shifting your energetic state, where people will kind of focus on the music and allow it to calm them. It takes a lot of the tension out of our nervous system, which then in turn takes a lot of the tension out of the muscles, and then people are able to relax a lot better, often get into deeper phases of sleep and so on, because they've given themselves this opportunity basically to chill with the music. Like, it's just calm, and they're not focusing on the chaos and the stress of their day and stuff anymore. So that just helps people essentially fall into deeper sleep, and then ultimately get a better level of recovery because they've slept deeper. So they'll wake up feeling more energized, more refreshed, and ultimately better able to deal with the crap that they might have going on the following day. And then what else? The overall thing, ultimately, like we're talking about here, is stress reduction. Now, this can sometimes be regardless of the type of music that you listen to. If it's a type of music that you enjoy, then it's going to have a beneficial effect on you. Now, I personally am not into heavy metal or thrash metal and all that kind of stuff. But if you are, and that's what makes you feel good, then there's a good chance that it will actually be of benefit to you. The catch we have to look out for with things like that, and some real harsh gangster rap and things. I love rap, by the way, certain aspects of the rap scene and music, but we have to be careful with the real dark stuff. You know, I'm going to shoot you this, that, and all the rest of it. We have to be careful, because often what we actually enjoy is being put into a negative state. And it's not that we actually like enjoy it in a perverted way or in a perverse way or anything like that. It's more a case of we believe that we deserve to be stuck in this negative, low vibrational state. So sometimes we will use negative things throughout our environment to put us into that state, because it kind of allows us sometimes to wallow in our sorrow, wallow in our victimhood, and so on, because it's all talking rubbish, and it's all harsh and horrible type music. And that's where we believe we belong. So we need to just be careful with that. But if that's not what you're doing it for, and you genuinely do enjoy that type of music, and it makes you genuinely feel good, then it ultimately won't matter what type of sound music you use. It can actually be of benefit. Cool. Right. Hopefully that one is answered well enough. Now, what are my views on if you say you're doing something and you believe you are absorbing energy? Will you be absorbing the energy? Okay. So yeah, ultimately, if you go back to what we were saying earlier about quantum mechanics and us all being essentially energy, yes, we do kind of absorb it. It's a little bit like if you walk into a room. So let's say you turn up to your friend's barbecue or party, and there's someone there that you've maybe never met before, but there's just something about them you don't like just something's off, and they make you feel a bit weird. That's their energetic state kind of clashing with yours. So in that sense, yes, we've kind of absorbed their energy, or we've experienced their energy. There's been this clash of our energy fields, and it's not coherent with our own. So it makes us feel a bit funny and feel a bit off. So it's a bit like when they say your vibe is off, and that's all it is. It's just your vibrational energy isn't matching this person's, or theirs isn't matching yours, and so on. So we feel a bit like we also sometimes get this even when there is a person who maybe is a positive person. So sometimes we can be in a bit of a negative energetic state, and then we see someone who generally is accepted as inspirational, motivational, and a high achiever and so on. But because their achievement makes us feel bad about our own lack of achievement, we can experience the same thing. So we end up resenting them, disliking them, hating them, but really they've done nothing bad to us. We've not really got a reason to dislike them. But what we don't like is how we experience ourselves when we experience them. So it's like, oh, I see them, and then our perception and our experience of them makes us feel bad. So what it is we really don't like is the way we are perceiving ourselves, not necessarily how we're perceiving them. So yeah, I do believe that we can absorb energies. Now, it's different for everyone. Some of us are far less sensitive. So I am much less sensitive than my partner, for example. She would consider herself an empath, which you've probably heard the term before. Basically, it just means someone that is susceptible to external energies and the energies of other people. And what those people tend to do is take on the burden of other people energetically and things like that. So it's like, oh, someone else has a problem, but you feel like it's your duty to fix that problem or to help them or to fix them and so on. So you end up in the negative energetic state as well to kind of match them. And sometimes it's done unconsciously because we're trying to maybe make them feel better, like almost like they're not alone. But we have to be careful about getting stuck like that because it's very, very draining. Even if you aren't an empath, I don't. So I'm a health coach, as you guys know, and I work in a gym as well as online. And what I used to find when I was doing like long days, 6 a.m. till 10 at night, and that would be pretty much packed with clients, small gaps in between for food and so on. What I would find is at the end of the day is I would feel pretty drained. Of course, it's a long day, but then what I come to realize is what often happens energetically is the healthier person or the person with the higher vibrational energy will often bleed energy into the other people because you're trying to heal them. So you're giving as much as you can, and you show up with this energy of giving and wanting to help and to help people basically get well, because many of them are overweight. They've got certain medical conditions they're trying to deal with. They're feeling weak, they're tired and so on. And where you bleed into them unconsciously, because you think you're just doing your daily job and you're trying to help as normal, but there is an energetic bleed, and therefore you end up feeling wiped out and exhausted, almost like you've just been working out all day, but it's actually that energetic bleed. And for me, if I'm honest, it was a relatively minimal thing, but I know a lot of people, coaches and things in particular, or people that work with people directly, it can be a big thing. Like even sometimes 2 or 3 sessions in a day can wipe some people out. So yes, I do believe in energies and exchange of energies and so on. What we have to remember is that energy is obviously all around us, and it can neither be, energy cannot be, can't be destroyed. It can only be transformed. It can only be transferred or transformed. So we can either pass energy on to someone, or they can pass energy on to us, or that energetic state gets transformed into something else. But ultimately, the summation of energy remains the same. So we're either bleeding into others or they're bleeding into us. Yes, there might be an element of staying the same if you've got 2 people who are of a relatively equal vibrational state. But of course, in today's world, that's less common because you've got people all over the place, particularly with all the shit that we've had going on the past 3 years. And obviously, much of that stuff is still going on, even though the particular specific stressor has kind of shifted and changed. The level of stress for many is the same, and for many even worse, because yes, we had the pandemic and so on, but now we've got obviously all the energy crisis and the bills and the cost of food and all these other things that are on top of that original stressor that we had, which is for many people actually making them worse. So we definitely have to be careful to protect our energy where possible. Cool. Let me just get back here in the comments. Yes, can wear you out. It's like someone stealing your energy. Absolutely. Yeah, it is. It's very much like someone stealing your energy. You're very good with that. Very positive person. Thank you very much. I try to be. I try to stay positive. And mainly, it's funny. Because I don't really perceive it as, oh, I'm staying positive, PMA, positive mental attitude, because often that's a false energy. So we do have to be careful. Some people, oh, yeah, no, everything's positive. No matter what you ask them, you're like, oh, how's things? And they're like, oh, yeah, great, fantastic. But you know that actually there's a lot of shit going on in their life and they don't really feel like that. But there's this idea that, well, if you just say it, then it's absolutely true. And it's not. Like, that's the first part. You have to say it, but then you actually have to do it in order to make it a reality. So, yeah, I don't necessarily consider myself an extremely positive person. I am, but not necessarily because I'm this PMA. It's more because of the perspective that I have on things. So I'm very much an observer. So I will sit back and observe things before I will react. And this has come from years of journaling, and I use a process now which is called stacking, which essentially is like a structured conversation with self. So any of my triggers, my problems, anything that I like, my own sabotage cycles and stuff, I take them through this process of conversation with self, so that I can analyze it at a deeper level and ultimately get to know myself better. Because the better I understand myself, the more I realize that nothing outside of me is really of any influence. It's only how I react to those things outside of me. So I've become very good, and still got work to do, but I've become very good at observing and then responding rather than just automatically reacting like many of us have kind of been brought up, taught, trained, educated, conditioned to do. So by being able to sit back and observe things before reacting, I can often come at things from a much more positive standpoint than many others. Like there'll be a negative thing happen, but I won't get caught up in the negative downward spiral of it and the depression of it and so on, because I will see it from a much higher level first and then choose my response to it rather than just get dragged in immediately through my emotional state. Because there are some times where you want to immediately kind of trigger and respond to something, but yeah, it's not worth it. And I say it's not worth it. It's just life's too fucking short for me to be caught up in everyone else's bullshit. And it's too short for me to get caught up in my own bullshit, which is why I spend so much time, literally every day. I spend at least some time having these written or typed journal conversations with myself. As I say, not because, talking to yourself is, the first sign of madness. Like I was certainly brought up hearing that, and people would say, if you talk to yourself, it's because you're mad. Really, they don't want you to talk to yourself, because when you talk to yourself, you find out the truth. Because the truth is, we already have all the answers that we need. We just have to be willing to ask ourselves the questions and then have the courage to actually answer them. And believe it or not, that takes time, because what that means is, for many of us, is we actually have to get completely integral with self. We have to remove all sense of truth that we have, because the truth can be skewed. My truth might be different to your truth. Like, in simple terms, like if we're just talking about religion, I might have a completely idea of what's true than you. But what we need to do is forget truth and instead get clear on the facts. So the facts live independently of truth. Here are the facts, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, I might interpret them one way and you might interpret them different because of our own life experiences, beliefs, and so on. So because of that, we now come up with two individual truths based on the same fact. But if we were willing to get clear and ruthlessly honest with ourselves about those facts, then though our truths will now align, because facts are undeniable. And I mean real facts. I don't mean skewed, distorted, twisted statistics and so on that are then put across as factual. I mean, what are the clear facts? Not what you think went on, not what so-and-so said. It's what are the facts. And once we have that, we can actually stand in truth and make a clear decision that is actually in alignment, not only with who we currently are, but is also in alignment with what we want to achieve for the rest of our life. And helping us move towards the outcomes that we want, whether that's to help us, whether that's to help others, and so on. Like, until we know truth, until we've got that foundation of truth. And another reason why we talk about truth so much, and when I say truth, I'm obviously referring to facts, is men in particular we are very, very good at ignoring the truth and kind of suppressing it and hiding it. And what I mean by that is I don't mean that we're necessarily blatant liars and go around telling lies to everyone, but we lie to ourselves about how bad or good our health really is. So we might have good health and we constantly talk down and talk shit about ourselves. We might be high achievers, but we talk down as if that achievement isn't good enough. So again, hiding from the truth or the facts. When it comes to our health status, we often have things going on that we know we should be checking out. We're starting to get fat or tired and so on. But no, I'm fine because I need to hold shit together. I don't want my problems to become someone else's burden and all the rest of it. So we hold on to this stuff. We ignore the fact that we're unhappy with our body. We ignore how we truly feel about the state of our body and the state of our health. And we just get on and we just plod through each day and, it becomes same old and all the rest of it. But the catch when we do that is ultimately we're living a lie. And the person we're lying to mostly is ourselves, because people will come to us, oh, how's things? Oh, yeah, all good. But they're not really. And that's not me saying you need to tell them all your problems, your sorrows, and your woes. But we do need to find a balance that enables us to still be honest, but not kind of offload and dump all our shit on other people, because there needs to be relevance in how we express ourselves, of course. But the truth is, at the core level, we need to be completely integral with ourselves. Until we are fully integral with self and we get clear on the facts about our health, what's going on in your body, what's going on in your organ systems, in your muscular system, in your bones and your joints, what's going on in your brain, what about your vision, your teeth, what about your bowel habits, what about your ability to digest food. And it sounds like, well, why are you breaking it down so much? But we might have an issue in one place, but the rest is pretty good. But until we get ruthlessly honest about what problems we may have, it's very difficult for us to make real decisions about what we need to do to heal ourselves. So we need to know exactly where we are, because once we're in that place of knowing exactly where we are and what's going on right now, we can have a true vision of what we see as possible for us, as well as, oh, actually, I did think I wanted to lose 30 pounds, but it turns out what I really want to do is get rid of my high cholesterol or get rid of my diabetes. I had this idea that if I just look better, I'd feel better, but it turns out I need to heal myself first. Then once I've acknowledged and accepted the fact that I've got some metabolic conditions going on that I need to address, now I can heal those. And guess what? The 30 pounds will often come off as a process of healing yourself first. But once we've got those 2 points, our start on the map and our end on the map, now it's much easier to choose and pick the specific steps, as in the action steps that we need to take in order to move towards that. Otherwise, if we've got this vague idea of what we want, this vague idea of where we are, well, we can only ever really then have a vague idea about what it is we need to do that's going to serve us best. Yes, ultimately, we'll all need to do the same types of things, work on our food, work on our exercise, work on our sleep and recovery, work on our mindset, work on our hydration, work on our breathing. Like, we all need to do those foundational things, but the amount of emphasis that we have to give to any one or the other will likely be very different for each of us. Some of us might need to go all in on the exercise, some all in on the food, some all in on breath work, some all in on sleep and recovery. Like, it's going to be different, but until you know where you are and where you want to go, it's very difficult to figure out for yourself where it is you need to lean and put most of your effort and emphasis. Otherwise, you end up kind of spreading yourself too thin, trying to do all the things all the time and ultimately getting nowhere, because it's very difficult to juggle so many things on top of your already stressful and chaotic lifestyle that many of us have. So get clear on the facts, people. Right. One more check here on our comments. Very good, very positive. Yep. Tai Chi looks on everything as enemy. Yeah, I believe Tai Chi can almost make you superhuman. Yeah, in some respects, for sure. With regards to this comment, I believe Tai Chi can make you superhuman. So the idea of Tai Chi, of course, if we break it down just to pure basics, it just means balance, like keeping balance. Everything is yin and yang. It's hard and soft. It's light and dark. It's hot, it's cold, and so on. So it's about maintaining some kind of balance. Then you'll notice within the yin yang sign, obviously you've got the black and the white side, and then there is the black within the white and the white within the black. Well, this represents the light within the dark and the dark within the light, because neither can exist without the other. So from my perspective, what I've come to understand of Tai Chi, being superhuman, ultimately, if you can get yourself to that state of Tai Chi, where ultimately life just kind of slides off you, almost like water off a duck's back, you're at this point of flow or harmony in life, you will appear to be kind of superhuman, because the things that affect the average person on a day-to-day basis will no longer affect you. So, for example, things like chemical pesticides and so on will no longer be a problem to you. It's not to say they're good for you, but you won't experience a negative health detriment or a problem from consuming them. You can get away with having a bit of sugar. You can get away with a bit less sleep. You can get away with being in environments that are high in electromagnetic frequencies, TVs, Wi-Fi, lighting, radio frequencies, and all the rest of it. Some people are very sensitive to that stuff. But the more you can reach that point of genuine harmony or Tai Chi within yourself, the less that stuff will affect you, the less it can affect you, because you're at a much higher vibrational frequency than the frequency of that particular thing that would have a negative impact on the average person. So I agree in some respects that Tai Chi could kind of make you superhuman, as in the things that affect the average person would not affect you. You have great energy. It can be, yeah. I have days, especially since having a baby, where it can be a little bit lower. But I obviously, I like I was speaking about a moment ago, I believe in integrity. So it would be stupid of me and also arrogant of me to come on here, preach to you guys, oh, you need to eat well, you need to sleep well, you need to this, that, and all the rest of it, and then not do it myself. It's very easy to be tempted to do that at times, because, oh, I'm here, I'm hidden behind the screen, you haven't come to my gym, I can kind of hide behind that, and pretend like I'm something I'm not. But ultimately, you're just telling a lie, both to yourself and to the world. And I don't really help or serve anybody by doing that, because one, I'd feel like shit and not come across the same. I wouldn't have the confidence that's needed to serve you at the level that I need to in order to help you get results. And of course, I'd be sitting here suffering from imposter syndrome. Oh, what if someone finds me out? What if they realize that I'm not fit, healthy, lean, strong, and all the rest of it? So yeah, I can't be bothered to live like that shit. So I am what I am. I don't eat perfect. I don't exercise perfect. I don't sleep perfect, but I keep it all done well and in balance. But then I don't expect or believe that anybody else needs to do it perfectly either. Instead, you just need good harmony between them, making sure you're taking care of the foundational basics. And then it's a case of, okay, well, now I want to enhance or increase my results. Well, then that means we need to enhance or increase the things that we're doing in order to match that new outcome that we want. So, yeah, thank you. Oh, I love Jung. I do love Jung. But if I'm honest, I love Alfred Adler more. So Jung is obviously a great psychologist. Freud had some good work too, obviously. But for me, my favorite of the big three is Alfred Adler. Yeah, and his book, or not his book, sorry, there is a book based on his psychology by Fumitake Koga and what's the other guy's name? Ichiro Kashimi, I believe. The book, The Courage to Be Disliked, is, if not my top two, it's probably my favorite book. It's awesome. Yeah, and that's about the foundational aspects of Adlerian psychology. Great book. Recommend it to everybody. I believe the whole world should read it. And what I like about the psychology is it fits with the way I operate and the way I teach and believe, based around this idea of ruthless responsibility of self. So, for example, in Jungian psychology, the idea would be, say, for example, oh, well, you had or experienced a trauma in the past, and that has led you to now acting in this particular way and going through this particular sabotage cycle because of this experience that you had. So ultimately it says, well, you are a victim of your past. So therefore you now operate like this. Well, with Adlerian psychology, instead it says, well, no, yes, the past happened to you, but the reason you act like this and have this cycle going on now is not because of the past that you experienced, but it's because of the present that you want to experience. So instead of it saying you're a victim of your past and you act like this, so you've got no choice almost, instead it says, no, you have a choice and you're making a choice to act in this particular way to elicit this particular experience for yourself. So therefore if you've created it, you can change it. Whereas if we're kind of anchored in the past, almost like this, oh, well, this thing happened to you, you were abused, you can never remove the abuse. You can remove the attachment or the meaning you give to it, but you can't remove it. So it's like, this thing always happened to me. It's much harder to then come to an acceptance and reframing that to, no, actually, this thing didn't happen to me, it happened for me. But if instead we go, actually, the past did happen, but I'm acting in this way because of an outcome I'm trying to have now. I want to feel this way. Like, as much as we shouldn't, or ideally wouldn't want to make ourselves feel negative and bad and sad and all the rest of it, often we get caught in these cycles because we believe that's what we deserve. So instead of saying the past is the problem, instead it's, no, your present goal is the problem. And we need to shift what that present goal is. So then if you have a new goal that you're genuinely aligned with, you're now going to naturally act differently in order to elicit that new outcome that you want. So that's why I love it. So it's more based down that, no, you are the creator of this reality that you currently experience. And if you've created it, that means that you can change it. And how do we do that? We take ruthless responsibility of self and we say, okay, well, this is down to me. I created this thing, so therefore I can change it. And therefore we act like an adult and choose new actions to align with the new outcomes or new consequences that we want to experience throughout the rest of our days as we move beyond that point where we're currently stuck. Cool. Me too. CBT. I love reps. Yes, without doubt. Where you've put CBT, if you mean like CBT oil, I don't know if you're asking my opinion on it. Not something I have ever tried, but I do know people with high quality CBT who have what they would consider beneficial results. So yeah, I'm neither for nor against it because I have no personal experience with it, but I do know a lot of people that use it and believe in it. So I would say if that's something you're using and it's working, cool. For some people, they're actually better off, in my understanding, actually just smoking weed. And when I say just smoking weed, I mean high grade, obviously quality stuff. And you wouldn't smoke it so much, you'd vaporize it, because when you smoke it, burn it, you also get carcinogens, etc. But for some people, not all, of course, some people are actually better off using the natural herb or plant than using the oil. So yeah, all comes down to the individual. Yes, you're absolutely right, John. Listen to your body. That's exactly right. Albert Ellis was a genius. You could be absolutely right. If I'm honest, off the top of my head, name doesn't ring too many bells. It could be one of those things where I've seen some of their work but don't recognize the name. But yeah, quite likely I will have to have a look into Albert Ellis and see what can be found. Awesome. Right, let me just double check, make sure I've got no other questions here. There's no more on that feed. We got here history, inspirational, real life tales. Okay, cool. Nope, that's someone else's question. Brilliant. Well, it looks like, guys, we have answered all of today's questions. So yeah, as always, thanks for showing up. Thanks for joining me. I will again in the next day or so post up our new thread in the Stronger Than Life group for all your questions to be added. If you're watching this on a replay and you're like Stronger Than Life group, what do you mean? On Facebook, we have a private group where I put regular content almost every day. I try to be on it daily, but it doesn't happen with life and stuff. But yeah, there's new content going into there every day on various aspects of my coaching system, different hints, tricks, tips, things that you can use and implement in order to help you move forward in your body, your being, your balance, and your business. Now, if you want to join that, just literally drop me a comment, say you want to join, or find me on Facebook, Tyrone Bray on Facebook, send me a DM, and we'll get you added to the group. You can, of course, also just search Stronger Than Life Coaching, and you'll most likely find it. Request to join, and then I'll add you in as soon as I see that request. But it looks like we're now at the end. There are no additional questions. I will have one last glance. Awesome. Yep, we appear to be good. Right. Well, as always, thank you for watching, people. I look forward to chatting with you in my next live, which will be next Friday. Take it easy, and I